I have a family history of Alzheimer's. My grandmother had it, my dad had it, I have it, and I guess if there's something we can learn that would help somebody down the road, that's worth a lot to me.
Unlocking the answers to what causes and hopefully one day what can cure Alzheimer's disease. Today we're talking about one of the most personal decisions a family can make. In full disclosure, these are pictures of me and my dad because it's a decision my family made years ago, donating a loved one's brain for research. Good morning, I'm Alexis Del Cid. Welcome to All Things Brain Health. After Alzheimer's disease takes hold of a family, there is anger, grief, disbelief, all the feelings. And through it all, there's also an opportunity to be part of the research into finding a cure. Today's show is deeply personal, especially if you or a loved one of yours is living with Alzheimer's disease. And it is personal to me too, because my dad, Jim, passed from Alzheimer's disease a year ago this week. But a few years before he died, my mom and I and my dad all made the decision that we would donate his brain to the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And my dad, who had the most wicked, sharp sense of humor, made plenty of jokes about that, including he said people around him always said they wanted to study his brain one day. Well, this was our chance. But we did know from being immersed in the journey as a family that studying the brains of people who had Alzheimer's disease plays a crucial role in advancing the research. So that is what we're talking about today. Brain donations and the incredible research being done because of them. Joining me in the studio are three brilliant doctors. We have two neurologists. We have Dr. Russell Swerdlow and we have Dr. Jeffrey Burns. They are neurologists. They're also co-directors of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at the health system. And we also have physiologist Dr. Paige Geiger. Dr. Geiger is also an Alzheimer's disease researcher who's dedicated her life to finding a cure. And also on a personal note for you, Dr. Geiger, your mom is living with Alzheimer's disease. So we are so grateful to you for being here to share that perspective as well, and to all three of our doctors. Dr. Geiger, I first want to talk about your mom, because when I met you, we were speaking at an Alzheimer's event, and you were just telling these incredible stories about how independent and amazing your mom is. What's her name, and how old is she?
Thank you, Liz. It's wonderful to be here and talk about my mom today with you and your audience. Her name is Cindy Geiger. She is a wife, mom of three, proud grandmother to six, and she is a proud Jayhawk. She went to KU. She has a master's in speech pathology from the medical center here.
She's also in the medical field.
Yes, yes, she is.
She loves sports. All the pictures that you shared are you at sports games with her. Now, are those all Royals and KU games? Are they also Little League? And
yes, all the Little
games?
League games. We have a game today. My son's playing baseball, and she absolutely loves to go to all of the games with all the grandkids.
That's awesome.
And it's really fun for all of us, actually, because there's something about the rhythm and pattern of the game that she's been watching her entire life, and it puts her in sort of a zone where those memories come back. Yes. She can still follow the game. She'll call fouls and balls and strikes and argue with a referee. So it's one of the best ways that we all spend time together is going to those games.
And how old was she? How long ago was she diagnosed, and what stage do you think she's in now?
Yeah, so we're fortunate that they live near here, and so she was actually diagnosed here at the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center about 10 years ago now. And so we think she's somewhere in the middle to late stage. She's actually very physically strong and healthy and capable. She's still living at home. Daily tasks are getting a little more challenging, but she's still very communicative, very social. She likes to be out and about. As I mentioned with my dad, they just got back from a stretch in Southern California where they go every year for the sun and the beach. Yes, good. And in a few weeks here in April, they're going to celebrate their 59th wedding anniversary.
Oh my gosh.
So,
okay, we have to send pictures from the celebration because I want to see them. It's so beautiful that we can showcase it. Cindy.
Yes.
Cindy is her name. Now, Dr. Burns and Dr. Swerdlow, I want to talk about what happens when you first examine a brain after a patient has passed. This show is a bit surreal because for this episode, we're using images of my dad's brain that were taken after he passed. For some reason, this isn't painful for me to look at. I think the most painful part was him going through Alzheimer's disease. Now this is kind of like taking apart an old car and figuring out like what went wrong inside. So Dr. Burns, when you look at these images, these are called the gross images because they're the broad overview. What do you see here, and can you instantly tell that this is a brain of someone who had Alzheimer's?
Yeah, well, here we're looking at your dad's brain from from the big picture view, and what we see is a little bit of shrinkage. So we look at it to see how much, has it changed at the big picture level in terms of shrinkage. And we see maybe a little bit of shrinkage, but not a lot. So, and sometimes we see a whole lot, and in your dad's case, we don't see a whole lot here.
That's so interesting because I thought my dad would he'd actually love it. I thought it was going to be smaller when he took his brain out. My dad had a bleak sense of humor, so don't feel bad about if I say something that's a little off color. That's like how I honor my dad. But seriously, I always thought it was going to be smaller because everyone talks about how drastically a brain shrinks, and he was so sick at the end. So that's not always an indication of how bad the disease is?
Right, no, it's not. And I mean, in fact, I think we're a little surprised how little shrinkage or atrophy there is here.
Right.
And just something we observe and note
so
and
sick.
Factor in, yeah.
Now, we always talk about amyloid plaques. That's a word we talk about, plaques and tau tangles. Which parts are the amyloid plaques here?
Well, so here, now we're looking sort of microscopically. So we're zoomed way in and looking at your dad's brain under the microscope and staining. We're using special dyes to bring out things like the plaques. And here, if you look on the right, you see the kind of the splotches there. Those are the plaques.
Is that a lot?
Yeah, that's sort of, I'd say moderate to, in the moderate range.
And then the tau tangles?
And
I want to show our viewers what that looks like.
Yep,
too.
and here again, kind of splotches, but we're using special dyes to bring those out and seeing them as well. So so the key here is there is the presence of amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles.
And then we have one more image, I think, to show. What is this one here?
Okay, so this is another type of protein. So amyloid's a protein, tau's a protein, and we're looking for those as the characteristics of Alzheimer's. There's often other things that we see in the brain, and in your dad's case, we see something called TDP-43, and this is another protein that is common in Alzheimer's, but it's also common by itself, and can sort of commingle with the changes of Alzheimer's. And an example of, these are things we're learning about right now in real time. How common are these other changes, and how do they contribute?
So Dr. Swerdlow, what are the things that researchers look for first when they first get the brain that a family has donated?
Well, it's kind of like buying a used car. The first thing you're doing is you're just looking it over the big picture, walking around. Are there any big dents in it? Is it missing a fender? Is a windshield bashed in? You're looking to see, is it the same size as we would expect a normal brain to be, or is it smaller than that? And
so did that surprise you, seeing how was it not as small as you thought it would be, knowing how sick my dad was?
Well, if you take hundreds of people in these brains and you correlate it with what their memory was like when they passed away, there's a correlation. It doesn't always correlate perfectly, but there are certain structures in the brain called the hippocampi that sometimes will be especially reduced in terms of their volume. But once you get the big picture sense of the brain, then you start looking deeper, and you start looking for what Dr. Burns was talking about, which is these things like plaques and tangles or other things that clump up in the brain. You look for vascular damage, where there are big strokes, where there are little strokes. Do the blood vessels look like maybe they were kind of on their last legs? And you catalog what you see. Basically, to go back to the analogy of the used car, you catalog the dents and the scratches on the car, and you say, yeah, this is this is an old car, and
Right.
you know, it's weathered some damage.
Do you ever study healthy brains? And I ask this because Alzheimer's runs pretty rampant in my family. My grandma had it. Both my dad's grandma had it, my dad had it, his grandpa had it, my dad's sister has it, but he has one sister who's still alive who hasn't been touched by the disease. She is perfectly healthy, sings in a choir, she's in plays, she's in her 90s. Would that brain be of value to you to study eventually?
Yeah, well, Alexis, you know, we need normal brains because we need comparator brains. We need to know what normal looks like. And the dirty little secret is that more times than not, when we get a brain from an older person, even if they're cognitively normal, we see plaques and tangles. And you know, we at the Alzheimer's Center, we acquire brains from people who are well characterized, and we know that at the time that they pass away, that their memory is working fine, and in 9 out of 10 of those brains, we find plaques.
So that's not the only cause of it.
Well,
You can have it,
it comes to the question of how are we defining the disease, but you know, the bottom line is if you have a memory problem and it's affecting your activities of daily living, and you have plaques and you have tangles in your brain, when we look at it, whatever Alzheimer's is, you had it.
That's really interesting. So I know and you can't take every brain that someone wants to donate, and we're going to get to the reason behind that in a little bit because we do have some viewer questions. But I want to ask Dr. Geiger a question on this because you have done some fascinating research on Alzheimer's disease. We had you, Dr. Geiger, on a show previously because she did this amazing study on how sitting in a hot tub could help with your brain health. So my question to you, Dr. Geiger, is has your role as a researcher shaped how you care for your mom, and what kinds of changes have you implemented in her life because of your research?
Well, yeah, so hot tubs, I mean, it sounds a little incredulous, but
Sounds fantastic. I would love it if that's something that could help.
The be all end all.
Yeah.
So I've been studying the benefits of heat therapy for 20 years now, and it sounds like some kind of faux pseudoscience, but actually what we now know is that sitting in a hot tub, sitting in a sauna can have many of the same benefits as exercise. And so that's sort of how we approach it as a lifestyle intervention, and we're trying to understand in what ways it can benefit our overall health, including the brain. And so I wish I could say that I've convinced my parents to get a hot tub, but I haven't done that yet. We all know how hard it is to get our parents to listen to us, no matter what our expertise is.
Even if you're the expert in the field. Right.
But my parents have been sort of ahead of the curve in terms of lifestyle. They've always exercised, they eat healthy. My dad runs and lifts weights. He still surfs at 82. And he has been very encouraging of keeping my mom active and making sure she goes for walks and stays busy. And so right now I think that's the best thing that we can do, and I'm still working on that hot tub.
Let me know when you get it.
Okay.
I want to come sit in the hot tub with you. There's also the reverse question, though, Dr. Geiger, and how does having a parent with Alzheimer's disease affect how you conduct your research?
Yeah, it obviously makes me very empathetic to the families and to our participants that are in the research studies, and it's incredibly motivating. I want a cure yesterday, as we all do, and it just gives me that sense of immediacy and that sense that, you know, what we're doing every day, all of us, truly matters, and it is very motivating in that sense. And so I'm always thinking about things that I can do. I'm very fortunate that at this point in my career, I was always studying preventative ways that lifestyle interventions like exercise can benefit other chronic diseases like diabetes.
Right.
So it's been very rewarding for me to be able to kind of shift focus with some fantastic collaborators at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and turn my attention towards Alzheimer's disease.
It's such important research. Now, to be clear, Dr. Burns, not everyone who wants to donate their brain can do it, because I wanted to do this big, donate your brains, and we can't do the all call for that. Why is that?
Yeah, no, that's it. Thank you for asking that. I mean, every offer we get for someone's brain is we take it very seriously.
Right.
We're very grateful, and
Of course.
and you know, it's a really important gesture. But we just the reality is we can't accept everyone's brain.
Financial reasons?
It's financial, it's resources, it's people, it's staff time. And then really it's how much value is there. They're all valuable.
Right.
But we have to prioritize the most valuable brains.
Like a specific kind of person with specific sets of circumstances?
Well, the key is people that we know a lot about, people who we've studied in life and for years. So the more information we have about somebody in their life, the more valuable their brain is to us, because we can link things like, the changes we're seeing in the brain with the symptoms or the characteristics of that individual. That's where the value of the brain gets really, really high. So we prioritize people who've been a part of our research program. For instance, our long-term study, people we see year after year, and we do memory testing and brain scans and cog testing and interviews. We have all that information cataloged, and then when we catalog, as Russ laid out, the brain changes, we can link those things together and learn a lot more. So we have to prioritize that group, people who are part of our research program first, and then we take brain donations, but there are times where we have to say we just can't accept it.
Oh man, and that's such a shame, because it's really rare that you hear of a donation being offered and for whatever reason it can't be accepted. That's got to really be hard. So if I hear you saying, right, you need more people involved in your research and your studies, and that might translate to more brains being available to be studied?
Yeah, that's right.
Which would be get more people participating in your valuable research in the programs like Paige is doing and things of that nature.
Right.
Would be helpful.
That would be helpful. And then, you can reach out if you're really, if this is something that's important to you.
That's what I did. I was like, sign me up. And I needed a witness, so I had to have my boss. She said, well, this is kind of awkward. I said, Jill, can you sign this? I'm going to want to donate my brain. Not now, but eventually. And then I had to have my husband sign it. And he's like, Alexis, this is grim. I'm like, I want to do this, but it's a weird conversation to have. You sign the back of your driver's license to be an organ donor.
Right.
But you don't necessarily, I never thought about what happens upstairs to the rest of me. We have some great viewer questions and some comments coming in. So if you have something that you'd like us to read out loud on the program or ask the doctors, you can send it to us on YouTube or Facebook. You'll find all the links right there on your screen. So Dr. Swerdlow, after you study the brains of people, what happens to the brain? Where would my dad's brain be now?
Yeah. So the first step is the diagnostic survey. The brain is taken, it's split into two halves. One half undergoes what's called fixation, which allows it to be, parts of it to be put onto slides so that the pathologist can do what we saw with your dad's brain, which is stain it to look to see if there are different protein aggregations there, and to look for the dents and look for the scratches. And then when that's done, it goes in a freezer. And then the other half of the brain also gets put in the freezer, and that second half, which hasn't been treated in any way, is in a state where it could be used for what we call molecular or biochemical studies, where we can try and look and see what was breaking down at a molecular level. So it supports a whole different range of studies, but these brains can be kept in a super cold freezer. It's not like a freezer in your house.
Sure.
And everything's very carefully cataloged. And then investigators who need brains, who have a question that they want to solve or a question that they want to address, will go to brain banks like the one we have here, and they'll say, look, I need a certain number of brains or this part of a brain from people in this stage of the disease, and I need some control brains, and what do you have in your inventory? And they can request pieces.
It's possible, like, if you have a loved one whose brain was donated, or my dad's brain might be used in research for decades across, like, the world?
Oh, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, once the brains are in the freezer, they stay, and they stay preserved.
Right.
And, the bigger the brain bank that we have, the more powerful it becomes.
That's so neat. Dr. Burns, can you think of, or what breakthrough treatments or specific research has been furthered because of brain donations?
Yeah, so I mean, brain donations and being able to look at the brain under the microscope and sort of see the sort of ground truth of what we're trying to predict in life when we see people. It's so important, and it helps us really drive the diagnostic process forward and get better at diagnosis. We know that, I guess 10 years ago, 20% of the time we thought somebody had Alzheimer's, they'd have something else.
Oh, interesting.
So they'd have something that mimics Alzheimer's. And
Okay.
how do we learn that? We learn it from brain donations and studying the brain after life. And so what's happened in really the last 20 years is we've had new techniques developed, like brain scans that show us whether or not somebody has amyloid plaques. We can now see the tangles as well using special brain scans. How did we get to be able to, detect and rely on those now? It's because of brain donations. And the other important thing is blood measures. Mm-hmm. How do we now have blood measures that let us know if somebody has amyloid in their brain? The only way we've gotten there is through really years and years of work, beginning with the brains and that we have in the library that Russ described, where we can look at the brain under the microscope and say, yes, this person has amyloid, and look at their blood and say, we can detect it in the blood and prove that out over time. And it all started with brain donations.
Gosh, so the person who's been physically affected by it will be part of finding a cure.
Yeah.
And that's just so beautiful.
It's a way to fight back. It's a
Yes.
way to keep giving, even from the beyond.
Just talking about it and keeping attention on this. Dr. Geiger, I want to ask you, where in your medical career were you when your mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
So about 10 years ago that she was diagnosed here at the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and I was really kind of in a very good place in my career. I had been promoted. I was here working as professor and was really excited about the work I was doing, looking at ways to prevent type 2 diabetes, as that's a huge issue in our society that we're continuing to battle. And coming from a background of always thinking about exercise as medicine and how lifestyle can really be preventative for all these chronic diseases, I always thought that my work was so meaningful in that it was keeping our bodies healthy, thinking about ways to keep the body healthy. But when my mom was diagnosed with dementia, it suddenly changed everything for me because it put the brain at the front and center of what it meant to have a healthy lifestyle and healthy aging. And so that really shifted everything for me in terms of what matters and thinking about lifestyle and prevention and cures that encompass the brain as well.
And so that inspired you to this specific hyper-focus that you have on studying the brains of people to try to find a cure for dementia or Alzheimer's. And then from the donated brains, how does the information gathered from brains that have been donated shape your research, the different studies that you do?
Yeah, so there are so many things we can learn from looking at these different brains. And as Dr. Swirlo and Dr. Burns mentioned, we know that the amyloid and the plaque are very important, but we also, Alzheimer's disease is incredibly multifaceted. It's incredibly complex. There's a lot about the pathology that we don't understand. And so looking at these brains at the molecular level, like Dr. Swirlo mentioned, looking at things like mitochondria, different proteins that might be activated or deactivated as a result of the disease progression can open up entirely new lines of research that can benefit someone like me and give us new directions, new ideas to pursue towards that cure.
It's one of those things that you, Dr. Swirlo, you said trying to get some power back or control over this disease. I like knowing that my dad will live on, truly, like his brain will live on through this research. It's just such a beautiful thought for all the people who have made that decision. I want to go to some questions and comments from our viewers because we do have some coming in. Becca has a question. She wants to know what the process was like after my dad died and how quickly it happened. So my dad really languished with the disease. We didn't know what it was. He started showing symptoms in 2013 that we didn't recognize. There just wasn't as much awareness even as recently as then. But once we made the decision, after he passed, the process was very quick. You get an instruction sheet. My mom and I were told we had to put ice around his head, and it looked so strange, but my dad would have laughed at it. He would have said, "You're turning me into a popsicle." He would have thought that was just wild. And then they were very respectful. Someone came, they took my dad's body, we just had a prayer, and then off he went, and I knew he was in your hands, which was actually such a comfort to know where he was going, and that he was going to a place where he would be treated with such care, and there was such a focus on understanding what had happened. So I found that process was actually beautiful. June has a question. Dr. Geiger, this is for you. June writes, when my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I used work as my escape from reality. I'm curious how Dr. Geiger doesn't get overwhelmed with the emotions when her work is so closely tied to her personal reality.
That's a great question. I mean, it's easy, it happens. I definitely get emotional about it, and it's easy to be overwhelmed. I think what helps me though is I feel incredibly fortunate that I can do something. Because when my mom was first diagnosed, I mean, I was going to these appointments with her, with Dr. Burns, who was her physician at the memory clinic, and sitting in the room and thinking, what can I do? This is so frustrating to just watch someone go through that. So for me, it is emotional, and I'm definitely invested in this, but at the same time, it is so rewarding to me to be able to do something and to actively engage in going towards that prevention and cure.
So that's your comfort, is finding some way to control the situation.
Yes.
You're right, there's that helpless feeling of you're watching a train crash, but in slow motion. So that would be such an empowering feeling to be able to do your work. We have a question from Jeremy. He wants to know, and Dr. Swerdlow, I'll ask you this, how much research do you get out of a single brain donation?
More than you would think. So, and the methods for studying these brains keeps advancing all the time. So for example, one thing we can do now with the new omics types of approaches is we can get a snapshot of all the proteins and genes that are being expressed in the brain, and we can see how the deck of cards in the brain has been reshuffled. And so, you know, part of it is revealing the plaques and the tangles, but the other part is trying to ask, okay, what's causing what? Because thousands of things are changing in the brain of an Alzheimer's patient, and are the plaques and tangles causing all these changes in these genes and proteins, or are these other changes, are they causing the plaques and tangles? And that's really our best way of trying to get to the root of all of this.
This is a conversation that I feel like could go on for hours. I would love to just kidnap you all and keep you here, but I know you have important research to do and other people to see today. So for today's takeaways, Dr. Geiger, I want to start with you. What do you need more of as a researcher to find a cure?
Well, not just me, but all of us. I think, of course, the resources that we've mentioned, we want to continue to increase the amount of funds and resources that go towards Alzheimer's disease research. But I think, you know, those numbers have increased in the last decade, and there are a number of advances that have come out of new clinical trials, but we always need research participants to be a part of those, and I think that is very critical. We need healthy individuals, we need people with various stages of the disease so that we can keep doing these studies, and we're very fortunate here in Kansas City and across the state of Kansas that we have incredible participation in our research programs, and a great number of people that let us track what's going on with their disease progression through the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and we just need to keep that going.
So if someone watching has signed me up, someone wants to sign up for that, where do they go to sign up for your research? How do they know it's happening?
Well, on our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center website, we have information for research participants. It's very easy to find, and we have a phone number you can call, and there are a number of different studies, everything from a one-day visit, right, Dr. Burns, to a longer study, like our hot tub study is a 10-week intervention. So the amount of commitment and the time and the investment really varies. So if you have just a little bit of time and one day, get in our program, get your name in there, and then if you have more time to commit, there's all kinds of things you can be involved with.
Dr. Swerdlow, what about you? What's the absolute best way someone watching can help you?
if this is an important issue for you, advocate. And it could mean if you're in a position to participate in a research study, participate in a research study. If you're not, there are other things you can do. You can befriend a researcher. You can get involved with an advocacy group, and perhaps most importantly, you can let your representatives know, those at the state level and especially at the federal level, know that this is an important issue for you, because they will hear that, and it will make a difference.
And Dr. Burns, your message to people watching who are living with Alzheimer's disease, what do you want to say to them?
Well, I'd say we're making progress, and we're making progress because, you know, we've been at it. We've been building things like our brain bank for 20 years, and it may feel slow, but the investments that, you know, federal investments and state investments into research and care are paying off now. You know, and just in the last few years, we've had the new blood measures introduced. We have new drugs. You know, and these things are making an impact. They're not a cure yet, but they're making an impact, and they are here because of the investments that we've all made. And so I'd say it's a hopeful time, and you can contribute. So.
It's incredible. And I just want to thank all three of you for joining the conversation. And I do want to say, we talked about empowerment and what people can do to take control. And I really hope that if you're watching and you're personally affected by this disease, I hope you feel free to talk about it. After my dad was diagnosed, he gave my mom and I permission to share his diagnosis and journey publicly with our friends, other family members. He gave me permission to write about it. And my dad did that because he knew that one of the worst parts about Alzheimer's is that it isolates you, and it can isolate a whole family from everyone around them, because you have this misguided, misplaced sense of wanting to protect them by not letting anyone see them that way. And I put that in air quotes. It's a disease they have no control of. That's one of my favorite pictures of my dad, by the way, wearing the apron with the muscles. You know, that was my dad's final gift to us, was telling us, I don't want you and Mom to be isolated. You've got to talk about this. But the reason I bring it up now is because, one, I hope by sharing the story that it lifts a veil for you and your family, and you can freely talk about it, but also because talking about it is another way to raise awareness, which can tremendously help towards finding a cure. It helps with awareness and the efforts to find a cure. So I hope you feel free to talk about your journey. And thank you to our viewers for joining the conversation. Coming up tomorrow at 8 a.m., this is a wild show, because a loud pop is not a sound you want to hear from your elbow when you're pitching. How this college baseball player went from the mound to the operating room, and when he expects to be back to the sport he loves. Tomorrow on Open Mics.